Hello there, Floralpreneurs. Happy Tuesday to you. It's Alison Ellis here of realflowerbusiness.com coming at you a few minutes late because I was having a consultation with a new client. So clients come first. Even though I'm very excited to be here to share more newbie tips with you. All month of April, I am sharing newbie tips. I'm answering your questions specifically that you might be embarrassed to ask out loud publicly in a forum. If you go to the link in my bio on Instagram, you'll see a link where you can click over to my blog. That'll let you submit a question anonymously if you want to do that. But don't be shy. You can ask me anything, anytime. Shoot me a DM if you would like. So let me get right to it. I actually did a quick poll this morning. Didn't get a ton of responses, but I'm still going with the most popular answer. I did a poll on what kind of topic you wanted me to cover today. So was it starting a flower business, design and flower care tips, or there was another thing I had, another thing. But the design and flower care was what people were most interested in. So I have those questions queued up here on my computer. I'm going to start with the first one today. So hi, everybody tuning in. Thanks so much for watching. So the question I got was about recipes. This is a good one. Pardon me for having to kind of look around my phone to get the question. Here's the question that was submitted. Hi, Alison. You mentioned on several occasions something about recipes. Can you tell me how you make recipes and how you use them for decorations and bouquets? So yes, recipes. This is a great question because recipes are everything. The recipe, just like when you're making a dinner, right? When you're putting something together, you need to know what ingredients are going into your finished product. And that's what your floral recipe is meant to do as well. Your floral recipe lets you know how much money you have, right, to spend on these particular flowers. So once I know, let's just say I'm making a $250 bridal bouquet. Once I figure out how much of that is my labor, then I know how much of it I have to spend on flowers, retail dollar flowers, okay? So if I'm going to put, let's just say I'm going to put 150 retail dollars worth of flowers into this bouquet. By retail dollars, this is what I teach in my flower math course, which is all about pricing. Retail dollars means you've already applied your markup. I always think in retail dollars. That's how I protect my margin, is because I'm not thinking in wholesale. I'm thinking about what do I sell this for. So when I'm putting together my floral recipe, I need to know what types of ingredients are going into it, right? So what kind of dish are you making? Are you making something that you need white roses, or do you need pink roses, or do you need snapdragons, or do you need stuck? Like, what are the pieces that are going into your finished design? And then how many of each of those can you afford to include, again, in the retail dollars? So that's how I put together recipes. I start with what I want the bouquet to look like and putting together the elements of the bouquet. And then I'm working on how many of each I can afford to put in there. And so I play around with those ratios until I feel like I've got the most beautiful and the most bang for the buck wrapped into one. That's how I approach my recipes. So the question is, like, how do you use them for decorations and for bouquets? I use them for every single thing I make on a wedding. So every single bouquet has a recipe. Every single centerpiece, arbor, hanging installation, you name it, fill in the blank, cocktail tables, they all have a recipe. Why do you need the recipe? So I hear people from time to time say, I can't work with a recipe, or I can't be creative with a recipe. And to that I say, I call BS, because you can, just like in your kitchen again, you can follow a recipe, you can improvise and still have the recipe come out well. You don't have to follow it to a T. If my sister-in-law were here, she could attest to that. I almost never follow an actual recipe in my kitchen, but I need to know what I'm gonna buy. And that's why you need your recipe. You don't have to follow your recipe once you're back in your studio if you're like, I cannot be restrained by only 5 roses in this bouquet. As long as your final order that you sent to your wholesaler is what I call tight and right, you're not overbuying, then it's okay to modify perhaps. Again, I say perhaps because you may be screwing yourself up somewhere later if you're pulling roses and then you need to make something and you don't have enough roses to finish it. Okay, so perhaps you can modify your recipe. But the most important thing about the recipe is for your buying, because it does not matter what you charge if you overbuy. It's something I will tattoo at some point. I don't need to. It's already tattooed in my eyeballs. I know this, but I would like others to tattoo this. It doesn't matter if you're charging the right markup and you're charging the design fee and you're charging for your delivery and you're charging for all the things if you're overspending. And so why do you use a recipe? The recipe makes sure you don't overspend. You don't overbuy. I don't want to be left with 50 extra hydrangea. I don't want to be left with even 50 extra roses. I don't even want to be left with 20 extra roses. I want to make sure that I am buying what I need and I'm not buying more than that. And the recipe is what helps me do that. So that's what I have to say about that. That's why recipes, that's how recipes. And if you have more questions on any of that, feel free to let me know. I do have a course called Flower Math, which teaches you exactly how to do this, shows you how I make the recipes, shares my exact recipes for 6 weddings. So like, if you really need more on this, I got it. It's a course called Flower Math. All right, I see another question that had come through that I want to also address. This question said, hi, I would love to know better how to create that loose, airy design seen in so many bouquets without an armature. Also, how do you attach greenery to staircases and fireplaces without brick clips? I'm figuring chicken wire, but how to keep it secure? Thank you. All right, so this is a good one because it's harder to just sort of answer this without demonstrating this, but it's a very good question. So loose and airy designs. So how do you create that without an armature? I consider myself someone who is more in the hand-tied bouquet genre, if I may. I make hand-tied bouquets. I like the classic hand-tied spiral bouquet. That is my jam. And that is usually how I approach my bouquets. If we need something lighter and airier, so let me back up. So the reason I say that, why I do the spiral, is because I don't usually use an armature because I'm doing the stems and the pattern that I'm following are what keep my stems and keep the style. If I made something though in my hand-tied style that I needed to be looser or airier, then it's about modifying the height. So I would start with that depending on what your bouquet method is. You want to have some things that are up a little bit and some things that are down a little bit. I don't do great with that, to be honest, because I don't like something beautiful to be down too much in the bouquet. So like I said, my bouquets are more in that like classic hand-tied style. But if you want loose and airy, then what you need to do is play with heights so that you get something airy. You may also want to take a look at the types of materials you're using. Because if you want to make a light and airy bouquet, but you're only using roses and hydrangea, harder to do. If you've got some jasmine foliage, a little easier to do. If you've got something that has tendrils, sweet peas with tendrils, be still my heart, right? You can create that loose and airy feeling even easier. So it's really a matter of, judging for yourself. Is it a matter of height? Is it a matter of what you're choosing to work with? Is it a mixture of both? And then my other answer for this would be, how do you create that loose and airy style without an armature? Use an armature. Why do we have to do it without, right? My friend Susan McCleary, Passion Flower Sue here on Instagram, she has all kinds of wonderful ways that she creates like organic armatures with like a piece of curly willow or kiwi vine or something. So you don't have to think about like, oh, well, I don't want to include a plastic or metal or something in here. you can create an armature just with like some random branches. I had some bittersweet, which is bittersweet because it looks pretty, but it's also invasive. It creates these crazy woody, tendril things. If I were to just cut some of those vines and, tape them off a little bit, I'd have a beautiful armature that I could use for anything and just tuck right inside a bouquet. So, my final piece, there's a little tongue in cheek, like, how do you do this without an armature? Why would you want to, right? But use the tools that you have available to you. Don't feel like it's a special design feat if you can create this without the armature. If you don't want to have metal or something like that, or plastic like the Holly Chapel pillow, totally get that if you just want to keep it organic. But you can make your own little armature and do that. All right, here's another one I'm going to answer. Oh, wait, hold on. That question had two parts. Also, how do you attach greenery to staircases and fireplaces without brick clips? Gonna really depend on each one, right? Each one is different. Some staircases you may be able to just attach with zip ties around a railing. Same thing like with some fireplaces, there may be like a random nail or screw somewhere in the fireplace where you can kind of like attach a little bit of fishing line or chicken wire, but like a little fishing line that can then attach to something that attaches to something else. We are, as my friend Teresa once said, 20 something years ago to me, we're the original cob jobbers. That's what florists are. We're the original cob jobbers. We can make something out of nothing, right? Back to the recipes. We can make stone soup. We can make something out of nothing. So we can absolutely figure out how we're going to attach things by taking a look at each individual space and going from there. And when in doubt, use gaffer's tape. That's what I've learned. It's something that can peel off easily from surfaces, and it's really used in a lot of installations and production work. So you can consider that as well. All right, I'm going to do one more on flower care. So this one was on hydrangea. I actually answered this on Clubhouse, if anybody tuned into my Clubhouse a couple weeks ago. So how do you prep hydrangea to ensure they last longer? And exactly how do you use quick dip and alum? And she says, and is alum short for something? So I'll tell you how I process my hydrangea. It doesn't necessarily mean that's how you should process your hydrangea, but I will tell you how I do it. Alum is not something that I actually use, although after I was reading about it yesterday, I might get some. If you're not familiar with it, alum powder, you can get it in the grocery store. It comes in like a little, like McCormick little container. What you do is you cut and you dip the hydrangea in the alum powder, and then you put them into a bucket of water, and they miraculously live longer, right? So why is this? Well, because I don't actually use this process myself, I wanted to look into it. I've certainly learned about it in workshops and talked to tons of florists who use quick dip or alum on their flowers. I don't use either, but I really might consider this alum powder moving forward. So it is, it's related to the onion, like think allium, right? That's the onion family. So when you you are going to quickly dip it into the alum. When you dip it into the alum powder, it's going to stick to the bottom of the hydrangea stem. Then you put it into the bucket of water. This is where, I don't know, somehow it still keeps it going. I would think, well, why can't I just mix the alum powder into the water, right? Does that do it too? It's something about perhaps the pH. It could be something about opening the stems up so that they drink more. But it's a technique that people use that I had never heard of. I've been a florist for 27 years now. I had never heard of this until, I don't know, maybe it was 5 or 6 years ago the first time. But yeah, and you can literally get it just right at the grocery store. And so a lot of florists will keep that around. Don't keep it in your kitchen. Doesn't go in your regular recipes, but you just dip it in and that's it. Cut, dip, and put it in. Same thing for quick dip. Again, I don't use quick dip, but quick dip is like a fast hydrator, right? It's supposed to like open up those cells and let those flowers drink. And so that's what people suggest with the quick dip. You, again, you dunk it in and then you put it into another bucket. I really try to reduce my chemical usage in my own facility here, in my own studio. And so that's why I don't particularly use quick dip. I'll also say I once asked my supplier about it, like when I first heard of quick dip. Again, it was, probably 6 years ago or so. And when I mentioned it, he was like, you don't need that. Like, it was very clear. Like, so it probably depends on how your hydrangea come. So I'll tell you how I process mine, right? Mine usually come with one of those little packets of jelly-ish water attached to the bottom and a plastic sleeve on top. And so what I do is pretty methodically, I cut them each individually with a clipper and slide the sleeve off and stick them straight into water. Someone asked a question, should the water be hot? It could be. Warm water is like to help hydrate, but I've seen a lot of people say they prefer to do cool hydration. Okay, so some things we want to try. I will put things in warm water that I'm trying to get open fast. That's how I think of warm water. Warm water is I want this to drink and open quickly. So lilies that haven't opened yet, I'll put into warm water. Roses that are a little too tight, I'll put into warm water. But if I want to make my hydrangea last, I'm not sure if I'm putting them in warm water or just room temperature water. A lot of times, frankly, again, what I do is I fill my buckets with water so they're ready when I come back to my studio from my supplier. And so then I can just cut and put them into my already buckets of water. I'm not sitting there putting warm water or cold water into them. It's just whatever temperature it is at this point, that's the temperature they're getting. So I often get them in the boxes, right? So I open up the box, cut off the little plastic thing that I don't want to think about what's in there. I cut it off straight into the trash, pull off the plastic sleeve, and just stick it right into a bucket of water. I make sure that I don't have too many in the bucket. I don't think hydrangea like to be crowded. I think they need a little bit of breathing room, a little shoulder room, right? I do take off almost all the foliage. Unless the foliage is looking so super great, I take off pretty much everything except maybe at the top 2 nodes I might leave. If they're damaged in any way or brown or, sometimes they're almost black, off they go immediately every time. Once they're in the bucket like that, I spray I think the technical word is the bejesus. I spray the bejesus out of them with water. Spray mister with just water. So the heads are like wet, like glistening wet. And that's what I do. And then I just keep going. Each bucket gets the same treatment until all the hydrangea are processed. And then I will continue to check on them. Like the next day I'll come in and then I push on, right? Don't you do this? You pat your hydrangea? Give me a thumbs up if you pat your hydrangea like this. So yeah, I'll pat the hydrangea to feel how turgid they are. And if they feel really good and solid, I'll just give them another spritz with water. Again, this is in my studio. It's not in a cooler. It will probably be like an air-conditioned space. Maybe there's a fan running too to keep it a little bit cool. And if they're turgid, like I said, just spraying them. If they're not, and sometimes there's a few that aren't, because even though I never make a mistake, sometimes there's a stem that's not quite in the water. When that one is a little droopy, I'll take that out and I'll cut, a couple inches off the bottom. If the hydrangea is super dry, you got to cut more off the bottom to give it a fighting chance, right? So I'll cut a little bit more off of the bottom, spray again, the technical term, but Jesus, out of the thing. And I'll probably put it into a separate vase or bucket so that I can really keep my eyes on the wilty ones and see which ones came back. Now, if they're super duper wilty, I think most florists know this trick at this point, but I honestly didn't know it for a really long time. If you have a super wilt, like this kind of wilted hydrangea, take it out of the bucket and dunk the head, submerge the head completely underwater and leave it there. For how long? I don't know. It depends. It depends how wilty it is. It probably also depends on the color, frankly. I think sometimes the white hydrangea are the slowest to come back with this method. But if they're super wilted, submerge them, let them get totally dunked in water like you would never consider doing to anything in your life, like it's in a dunk tank, and leave it there. Try a half an hour, try an hour. Some people say leave it overnight. So again, it's going to depend how wilty it is. But then when you take it out of the water, give it a little shake, cut a bunch off the bottom again. I don't know if you noticed, my fingers got bigger that time. I got more off. Cut it as short, like the shorter distance to drinking is going to help it drink a little bit faster. Cut it, put it in a vase, and then see what it does. Sometimes it like perks right back up in no time. Sometimes that baby was a goner and there's nothing you could do and it's not coming back. But that's something that you can do to try to help and give it a little refresh. So when it comes to my hydrangea, like I said, you should not do as I do necessarily, but that is what I do. So I don't use any chemicals with it. I don't use alum. I don't use quick dip. I don't put them in the cooler. I spray them with water and hydrate them from the outside in. Then when I need to use them in something, I cut them, I use them, I put them in an arrangement, and I'll probably mist them again. And then I'll probably mist them before I deliver them. And I won't mist them on site unless I absolutely have to for some reason. But I just keep them hydrating from the outside in, and that's how I deal with them. All right, let's see. I have a question here. If you are using for a wedding arch, would you tube it, or do you think damp moss would be okay? I would do what I said, and I would hydrate the heck out of them, not so technical term, with water on site, so they're nice and wet when I go to put them up, frankly. Not like where they're sopping, right? Not where they're like heavy from the water, but where you can tell that they have water all over them. And then I would tube them. I'm a tuber when it comes to things that are delicate like hydrangea, just because I feel like it's my obligation to the client to know what my flowers are capable of and to not ask them to do more than they're capable of on the wedding day. So for example, even if I think a lot of us, I hope all of us are really reducing our foam use or eliminating it if possible, which it is possible, by the way. If I'm doing an arrangement that is in Oasis, I don't put my hydrangea in the Oasis. I just put them in the water around the arrangement so that they get that water like directly. And again, even that, I won't do that. I won't necessarily put the hydrangea in on Thursday for Saturday, right? I might not even put it in on Friday for Saturday. Like that's the last thing that goes in those arrangements. I'm misting it, I'm cutting it, and I'm putting it in there right into the water so it has the best fighting chance for the day, versus just being like, I'm going to bang this puppy out, put it in Oasis, and just hope it makes it through the day, right? So that's typically how I do it. I don't think that moss is, unless it's like super wet, is going to provide hydration up the stem. And so that's why, again, this is not something I always think about drinking through the stem. If you hydrate them well from the top down, that is going to help them live longer. So give that a try, and I would be curious to see what you think about the longevity. I find even as I say, like I don't put hydrangea in Oasis. Of course I do sometimes for arbors or mantles or things where I know like I have to make this piece ahead of time. It needs a brick of Oasis here. I'm surprised at how long they live when they've been hydrated from the outside in. So I sometimes just leave them hanging around just to see like how long is this little Oasis cage, like those little discs, right? Like how long is this hydrangea going to live in here? And I've been surprised to see them in there like 5 days still blooming, even without being in a cooler or having any kind of processing done to them. So, things can have a fighting chance if we hydrate them well, treat them well, and know our product. So, that's my advice on that is make sure we know where it's going and make sure it's well hydrated. Okay, so those were, let me check here. My computer went to sleep through all my talking here. So let me see if I've got another question on the flower care. Oh, here, this is a good one actually. This one came in and luckily she left her email because I sent her a message directly because it was a question for something that was happening the next day. So she got her answer already, but I thought I'd answer it for you too. She says, I have my first wedding of a person I don't know tomorrow. First of all, can we all just stop for a minute and remember that moment where you had your first wedding with somebody you didn't know? Your first non-friend wedding, like round of applause, right? It's a big deal. So she said, they're traveling up the coast with the bouquet and boutonniere. I'm providing a vase for the trip for the bouquet, but I'm having nightmares about the boutonniere. I want to make sure I do everything I can to make sure it doesn't wilt or die. I would love some steps to rely on to make sure I don't F it up. I don't have a cooler yet, but I did buy boutonniere boxes. I don't know if I should line the box with wet paper towels and store overnight in my fridge, or I could put it outside in my shed. Okay, so here's the bottom line. She goes, I was thinking of going out to get some crowning glory. I've never used it before, but outside of hydrating the flowers, I dip them in quick dip. They're sitting in flower food and clean water, which I'm changing daily. What else should I do? The wedding is this Friday. Thank you so much. Okay, so like I said, luckily she sent her email with this so I could give her a direct answer. But if you're traveling with boutonnieres, again, I'm going to shout out my friend Passion Flower Sue. She shares we learned this at the same time actually from Gregor Lurch, this thing called the hydration chamber. So I share this on my YouTube channel. You'll find it's called my best boutonniere storage tip or something like that. And you'll find it here on Instagram on Sue's feed. Again, that's Passion Flower Sue. You all know her. So she shares her hydration chamber here on Instagram. What it is basically a plastic container. And what you want to do is put your flowers in them already arranged. And this could work with your hydrangea too, going back to the question about using them for the arbor. You could do a similar method like this with the hydrangea, even though they're still on the stem. So the idea is we put them into a sealed container so that they're keeping moisture in. That's the idea. And we put a wet paper towel on top. Now again, not wringing wet, but darn near close so that the flowers are covered, the boutonnieres are covered. So what I'll do is I'll make my boutonnieres on Thursday or Friday. I'll put them in, I use takeout containers, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not pretentious about what they go in. I like to reuse. So I will put them in a plastic container. I will put a wet paper towel over the top of the boutonnieres and close the container and just put it in my cooler. Then, and you'll see this again in Sue's videos or in my video over on the YouTube, then what you'll see is the flowers drank from the outside in and they got very turgid. They're strong, they're ready to go. They're ready to drive up the coast, all day, and it's not going to be a problem. They're going to be super duper hydrated. So that is what I suggest if you want to have flowers that last longer, especially for a boutonniere. Make sure, again, it comes down to that processing. So how would you use this for the hydrangea, like I mentioned? Well, you wouldn't have them maybe in a sealed plastic container, but what you could do is spray them, put a damp paper towel over the heads, and then maybe cover them with a plastic bag and tie that and then put it in the cooler and see how those go. So if you're doing, let's say you're gonna do 5 hydrangea in an arbor, put those 5 in the cooler and see how they do with the hydration method. So I've done this, every now and again when you get blue or purple hydrangea, sometimes they're so small, right? But then sometimes they're so big, you have to kind of trim the bottoms. So I did that a couple years ago where I had so many I had to trim, but you can't throw them away. But what am I going to do with this hydrangea? It's just going to die. Well, I did the hydration method. I actually just put them in one of those big, the plastic liners that we use, like an 8-inch one. filled it with hydrangea. I think I filled a couple of them with these little pieces actually. Sprayed them down with the mister, just water, no crown and glory. Put the paper towel on top, put them in a bag, tied them up, and then they were like so perfect for cake flowers. Oh my gosh, so happy, so healthy, so not wilty, and they really looked beautiful. So this will help you get longevity out of things that normally you might be like, this is just, there's nothing I can do with this. Same thing with delphinium. Everyone's got the most beautiful, like mauve delphinium. That makes my heart skip a beat. But they always have, those hybrid delphinium always have broken pieces at the bottom, sometimes lots. So what I do is I'll take those off, do the hydration chamber. Again, this is something we learned from Gregor Lurch at a workshop, and it's a life changer. It really is, because then I was able to take all these dainty little hybrid delphinium side shoots that normally I would always save, but then I would have to throw away later when I realized I had nothing to do with them and now they're dead, right? Because you do that, you save these little things, you're like, these are so great. I'm just gonna put it right over here. And then like hours later, like there are those dead, perfect little side shoots, right? So what I love to do is be able to finally do something with that stuff. Instead of it sitting to the side, it goes into a hydration chamber, it goes into my cooler, and then if and when I have like, oh, I can use this side shoot, it becomes a totally usable thing. So I've actually made beautiful head wreaths out of these hybrid delphinium side shoots that normally would be kind of a lost cause, or I would consider them to be too fragile for like to make an entire head wreath out of them. All of a sudden they're this beautiful usable flower, right? So use that tip in good health, and make sure to check out at least one of our videos to get a better sense of what it really looks like. But it is just as straightforward as I described it there. Let's see, Wild Feather Event says, I love drying out the hydrangeas if I can get them back to life. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I don't dry a lot of flowers, but maybe I should start trying to do that this year. I like that idea. Or pressing them, doing something with them. All right, so I think I'm gonna stop it there. I think I have kept you long enough. I was a few minutes late because I was having a consultation, so I went over a few minutes to make up for it. I am nothing if not honest. And I'll be back tomorrow with more tips. I've got tips coming at you tomorrow and Thursday. I'm taking Friday off because I wrote on my calendar off, and I don't want to turn myself into a liar. So I'm gonna stick with the day off. And it's my birthday on Saturday, so I earn that day off. I deserve that day off on Friday, so I'm gonna stick with it. But I'm gonna keep up with the newbie tips all the way till the end of the month. So tune in tomorrow. I don't know exactly what time. I got a bunch of consultations this week. Maybe it's happened to you too. The 2022 clients are coming out and ready to book, and so I am booking consultations this week. So I've got 4 on the books this week. And so what I'm going to do is try to just, schedule these live streams when it's convenient for me. And thank you for understanding. Somebody says, happy birthday. Oh, thank you very much. Yes, my second COVID birthday. I'm looking forward to next year being a non-COVID birthday. That's the best. Thanks for all the info. I appreciate it. You're so welcome. Thank you guys for tuning in, especially with the random short notice about when I'm doing this. But I will see you back here tomorrow with more tips. And like I said, don't hesitate if you have questions for me. I'm happy to answer them for you this month or anytime, right? So I'm here. Check out my website at realflowerbusiness.com. If you haven't been there in a while, there's tons of resources over on my blog. So do check them out if you're looking for random stuff. You may find it there. All right. Thanks so much, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.